make, but you do. You make a heck of a difference. I drove past a landfill recently outside of Stellenbosch. It's quite horrifying when you look at a mountain of waste that we create. And I set a challenge to only half fill my wheelie bin every week. And I compost and recycle and try and put as little as possible into the bin, because everything that goes in that bin will go into the ground, will go into the earth. And it makes me think with all these plastics and so on. So when we say reduce, reuse, recycle, we think of packaging, food, clothing. Can we reduce the waste? Can we reduce the packaging we use? So I just want you to think about that, because we can, on our own individual level, help protect our environment, and I hope safeguard it for future generations. We can all make a difference. So I'm not going to keep you any longer. I'm going to jump in the Mercedes in a moment, but I'm now going to hand over to Margie, who's going to be wearing 2 hats this morning, and she's going to give you quite a bit of news of what's going on in the club. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. I'm first going to be reading to you a communication from Janette, who is luckily for her in Mauritius, but she is on Zoom with us. So good morning, Janette. And this is her message to you. Hi, dear IWC members. Today I'm not with you, but I'll be back from my holidays next week. Thank you, dear Margie, for helping me today to inform all of you about our activities. First of all, we would love to say welcome to Maxine Peters and Marcella Solis, our new area reps for the City Bowl, that's Area 3. You did an excellent job as past board members, and we are sure you will organize beautiful coffee mornings. And we are delightful to give warm welcome to Renee Walker, our French conservation group leader. Please contact Renee if you'd like to attend this group. And I would like to share with you some last minute news. We have new area rep for the West Coast, Area 12, Yanni Humphreys. Welcome, and also a big thank you to Maria Grazia for your great work as the area rep and as the Italian group leader. Grazie mille, Maria. We are very thankful to all our area reps who keep the club together with your meetings, and of course our group leaders. Thank you for making it possible for all these beautiful outings. We had a very first sailing outing with the Tourist Around Town group. Thank you, dear Marianne. It was a great success. In fact, it was such a great success, and this is an aside from me, that she's going to be running another one. So I think that's really great news. So contact her if you'd like to join. I think there are about 8 or 10 seats still left, or places. And back to Janette's message. But now, let's see what's happening in the next couple of weeks. The Art and Design Group will take you to Noordhoek to admire the work of Nola Muller. The Spanish Conversation members are meeting today at the Poolside Cafe. That's on the other side of the pool at 12:30 here today at Kelvin. The Garden Group is having an outing in Somerset West at Akara, and the hiking and walking group will meet in Newlands Forest. We wish you a nice Sunday lunch at Gusto in Century City, and with the Friday lunch group at Fratelli Palmieri. The One Dish Club will be this time at Suzette Raymond's home in Musenberg. We will have more activities like the international cuisine at Zenia's home, and you will visit the famous I Love Coffee in Claremont with the Coffee Around Cape Town group. And Simi will take you to the Furniture and Design by Morgas and Sons. And last but not least, we will be rocking with you and by home for the Zumba Levels party. Enjoy this month and see you soon. I'd also like to raise the fact that Area 11, that's Simonstown, the area reps are Sue Allenby and Janice Page. They'll be having a coffee morning on Monday. So please let Sue know if you're able to attend that. And that's all we have from Janette. Thank you, Janette. We look forward to seeing you soon. And then I have to say to you, it's good morning from me and from Mary. Mary, as some of you have already met her, is our philanthropy bear. And she came to us courtesy of Irene Nelson. She's named Mary for Mary Robinson, who was the past Prime Minister of Ireland, who does really good humanitarian work around the world. And our Mary will be traveling with us and with me to all our outings when we go and visit our charities that we support. And she'll be here every month just to remind us that she's watching us as we give. She came with us last month to Ons Plek, our charity for last month, and she was very happy to be at that handover. However, it was John Bunyan who said, "You have not lived until you have done something for someone who can never repay you." You ladies of the IWC really do live. When it's only to look at your generosity shown at the Leiden philanthropy table today, I mean, just look at that, it's really fantastic. This month, we're giving seniors at we thought it was 2 old age homes, but today it became 3 because we have so much to give. To 2 old age homes. The one is the Haven Old Folks Home in Woodstock, and the other is Carlisle Home, which is in Fishhook. And so we're doing this because we're trying to spread the love around the city so that we don't always kind of go where it's most convenient. And we'll also be doing Noah. One of our members today spoke to me about Noah. And because we have so many Easter eggs, we'll also be going to Noah in Stellenbosch, and that's in Ida's Valley, where they have some old folks. I know, Andre, you know them and have worked with them before. And so we'll be giving some cheer to them on Easter Sunday. And what we are giving these homes is a cake of white soap, which you brought, and it's wrapped up in a brightly colored face cloth, and it has an Easter egg. So they'll get this next week. On Wednesday, we'll be visiting Woodstock Old Age Home, that's the Haven, at 10 o'clock. And on Thursday, we'll be going to Fishhook, to Carlisle House, and we'll be there at 11. So if you want to join us, please just send me a mail or a WhatsApp, and I'll put you on the list of people who are going to be joining us. And so they'll each be getting one of these next week, and then on Easter Sunday, they'll each receive another Easter egg at their breakfast table. I want to thank the ladies who this morning have helped to wrap, because it's quite a big job. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes to do each wrapping. And we've got 160 to do. And so on Monday, we're going to have a work party. We'll have a work party at my home in Sea Point. So if you want to join the work party, it's from 10 to 11. I already have 2 takers, but we will need quite a bit of help to wrap the rest of these parcels. So thank you for those of you who have helped. The book sales are ably handled by Antoinette, and they're doing well, but today they would have liked more books to be brought along for sale. She also needs help to pack up each day. We do manage to get the unpacking done in the morning, but if you could stay a few moments afterwards and help Antoinette get those boxes. We've got a trolley, but back, because it's got to go back into the storeroom. And we need help, some strong people, and we're all pretty strong to help, to get them back in there. So that would be amazing. The funds that are raised by the book sales go to animal welfare at the end of the year. So it's really a worthy cause that you could happily support. My gratitude always goes to the Red Hat ladies, who under the leadership of Barbara Smith do such a great job selling raffle tickets at our meetings. The board have decided that as from the May meeting, we will be allocating 2/3 of the takings of the raffle to philanthropy and 1/3 to the prize. If anybody has a challenge with this, do email me and I'll take your thoughts to the board. It would be amiss of me not to mention great donations received this month for philanthropy. Firstly, Liliana Carter a donation from the last cuisine event at the Indonesian Embassy. I'd like to thank her, and I'd also like to thank the Embassy for their help in raising those funds. Secondly, to Wendy Kutsia who took us to the Mount Nelson in the behind the scenes event. The hotel decided to reverse the charge for the arrival coffees, so that's gone to philanthropy. Thirdly, Elizabeth Hanley has donated the proceeds from the last music appreciation event, which happened on Monday. It was a great morning, I must tell you. For those of you who haven't been to one of her events, put it on your list. Fourthly, the Wright Girls. You'll remember they spoke to us at the last meeting, and they sold their books, and their proceeds, 10% of the proceeds, has been donated to philanthropy. So thank you to the Wright Girls. Then Dieback, who runs the wine appreciation outings, brought me an envelope this morning, and it was from Kanu, where they went last time, a really nice donation for philanthropy. So that'll be put to very good use. Thank you, Di. Next month, we'll be supporting the Alexandra Institute for Mentally Challenged People. And what we need are gently worn clothes. Many of these patients spend their time in bed, and so what we really need are things such as warm jerseys, tracksuits, slippers, vests, socks, sleepwear. And any other clothes that you bring along, I will donate to Chic Mamas, who you all probably heard at our Christmas event. So I will sort them out into what is appropriate for the Institute, and what the rest will go to Chic Mamas. I did receive this morning 2 huge bags of children's clothes, and I'll be taking those to St. Anne's, who look after abused women who take their children with them to St. Anne's. So I'll be dropping those off later today. I'm grateful to the Old Vine Project for their donation of wine for our second prize today, and for the wine for the board table at lunch today. Thanks, Andre. Ladies, we all have great life experiences enjoying the many activities of the IWC, meeting friends, old and new, and enjoying what this beautiful city has to offer. But there's something special about your care for the less privileged. For all of this, I'm deeply grateful, and so is Mary. And now I'm going to hand over to Julia, who is our membership coordinator, member of the board, and she will take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, we have a handful of new members, which is always really lovely to see growth in this club. As we were saying, there are some clubs that, you know, they're dying a death, really, got a little bit slower. But ours seems to grow from month to month, which is really, really good. Lovely. Thank you for bringing your friends and introducing new people to the club. Can you hear me okay? I've got to learn to face this way. Okay. Christine's going to help me give our members the Hessian bag, their new, the directory. We hope to get the directories printed and ready to you very soon. And the last of the lanyards as well. Okay, our first one is Tracy Simmons. Tracy, you can go, but Tracy applied last year and has been traveling and stuck in Europe and things, I think. Were you? Sort of. Traveling for a long time. So Tracy was born in England and hasn't lived in Cape Town very long, but she has lived in South Africa for most of her life, and also lived in Sweden and Australia. You speak English, Afrikaans, French, and some Italian. She has been an English and French teacher in secondary schools. So I joined you up with Renee Walker's French conversation group, and has been an interpersonal development facilitator, writer, business coach, and editor, and is a Francophile and loves to practice speaking French as much as possible. So you live in area 5. So your rep is Nydia, who I don't think Nydia is here today. Oh, she is. This is Nydia over here, your area rep. Okay, welcome to the club. Thank you. Helena is our normal paparazzi photographer, and she is unable to make it today this morning, but we've got a thank you for her standing in and helping us. Thanks, Vilma. Okay, the second one is Indira. Did you say Gela? And Indira was born in Port Elizabeth, but has dual nationality with Switzerland. She speaks English, German, Afrikaans, and Gujarati, and is now retired and enjoying travel, fitness, good food, cooking, walking, theatre, and movies. You live in Milnerton Ridge, so your area rep is now Yanni Humphreys. Welcome to the club. Our next new member is Helena Mcphail, who was born, and I'm not very good at saying this, Tweevelskloof, I'll have a guess, South Africa. Anyway, I was just saying in South Africa, and moved to Cape Town in 1980. She speaks Afrikaans and English and is learning French. So you've already joined Renee's group, I believe. Helena has a diploma in commerce from Pretoria and enjoys patchwork and quilting, amongst other things. And I know we have other members who are extremely talented at that. As education is also an interest, Helena is wondering about setting up a quilting group maybe in the future, and is also available to help with computing, which is great for me. Helena has also lived in America for a year and England for 5 years, and lives in Camps Bay. And so your area reps are Carol Armstrong Hooper and Molly Cabral. Welcome to the club. Our next new member is my neighbour, Sandy Shen. She's from my neck of the woods. So Sandy was born in China, but is South African now, and has lived in South Africa and Cape Town for 27 years. Sandy speaks English and Chinese. She's managed a food market and restaurant, and also co-owned a noodle factory, and now runs Airbnbs. Sandy is a member of a traditional Chinese dance group and started to play badminton, and sells baked good as a hobby, and is passionate about improving her dessert making skills. So I'm looking forward to you practicing those on me, being nearby. So she's from Leuvenstein, which is area 13, Claudia and Claudia's area. Okay, thank you. Our next new member is Linda Smalenburg, and Linda is South African, has mostly lived in Cape Town, but also in Germany. So she speaks English, German, and Afrikaans. So Linda ran a retirement fund administration company for a long time with many staff in Joburg, and developed a computer program, sold the company and program to Sanlam. So you're also very talented in computers. Yeah. Creative and ready to help. So it's always good. Thank you. Your late husband was chairman of a board of trustees for 12 years. Thank you. We welcome you to the club, Linda. And now, last but not least, Cheryl. Oh yes, we've still got Cheryl.
Oh, okay.
She came.
I haven't got the bag.
Oh, my. Say one more. Mate, it's there beside you, Cheryl. Oh, shame. Come up anyway. Cheryl is a bookkeeper and business owner, and enjoys many of the groups, because Cheryl actually did belong to IWC a long time ago. So it's quite interesting to talk to her about what the changes look like and how the club has changed and developed over the time. She makes very positive comments about change, which is lovely. Cheryl runs a beautiful bed and breakfast in Kenilworth, and only left the club due to family commitments and is really looking forward to joining us again. Now you've got more time. Glad to be back. Welcome to the club, Cheryl. All together.
Yeah, okay. So let's give a nice welcome to our new
Yes,
members.
welcome to the new members.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce our speakers. I'm going to start with the ladies. Shelly Fuller has an MSc in conservation ecology and has been working in the environmental field for over 15 years in the private and NGO sectors. Her passion is getting her hands dirty with projects that make a difference on the ground, which have ranged from ecological restoration, supply chain sustainability, regenerative agriculture, and climate change mitigation. Having joined the WWF SA in 2014, she has been heading up the Conservation Champions team, which recognizes and supports environmental leaders in the wine industry, as well as setting up a number of collaborative retail partnerships within the fruit producing areas of the Western Cape. She is very passionate about the work she is involved in the WWF because she believes in the vital role the farmers can play in effectively mitigating climate change, as well as conserving the critical ecosystem functions that our society depends upon. When not behind her computer, Shelly enjoys getting in nature with her family and sharing meals with friends over a bottle of Conservation Champion wine. I'd like to introduce Andre Morgenthal. Andre is a marketing and communications consultant. Andre studied philosophy, languages, and drama at the University of Stellenbosch in the early 90s. Towards the end of his studies, Andre started a wine tourism business, offering specialized wine tours to the discerning wine and gastronomy tourists, as well as training and consulting to restaurants, hotels, and lodges. Andre has lectured at the Cape Wine Academy and also wrote a wine column for a Sunday business newspaper. He has worked several vintages at Domaine Bretagne in Vougeot, Burgundy, and made wine on a small Stellenbosch property, Clos de Sille. In 2001, he joined the Wines of South Africa as a communications manager with a focus on media relations, as well as a mandate for wine tourism, and to represent the South African wine industry in the Great Wine Capitals Global Network. In 2016, he resigned from Rosa to start his own business, among other ventures, assisting Rosa Kruger with the Old Vine projects. Can you come up, Andre? Thank you.
It's a great honor to be here, and thank you, Margie, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to share what we do with the Old Vine Project conservation efforts, and I'm very proud to share the stage with Shelly today. I was very much involved in starting the initiative at Wines of South Africa in the beginning, and it then folded into the World Wildlife Fund, which is great to see it carrying on. To start with, before I start telling the story of the Old Vine Project, I want to point out the vineyard that you see on the slide is a transplanted vineyard from the Swartland to Lomarin. I'll get to the timeline in a moment of where we started, but Mr. Rupert gave us seed funding for the Old Vine Project, but he didn't have any old vines at Lomarin. And he told Rosa Kruger, who was viticulturist there at that moment, he said, please bring me an old vine vineyard that I can plant in front of the office window so I can have a view of it, because he had a passion for old vines. And Rosa said to him, it's not possible. And those of you who are into gardening might know that if you want to transplant a rose, if the rose is planted like this, you have to replant it like this and not like that, because it's used to the sun coming across from east to west. So it was a very meticulous process, and she said it's not possible, and Mr. Rupert said, well, I'm paying your salary, you're going to do it. Otherwise, I want to ask Skalkberger to do it. And Rissa said, no, I'll do it. She brought across the vineyard. It's behind the cellar, and they had a 99% success rate with the vineyard. And it's old Shannon bush vines, and they make a special wine from it that Mr. Rupert used to only use for his functions. It's called the Obostok. But when our project got traction, it became available for tasting at the tasting room. So you can go and have a taste of that special wine. Then the challenge. How the Old Vine project started is when a vineyard grows old, it drops its yield, which makes it less economically viable for the farmer. So a farm of any agricultural product needs to yield a certain amount of money per hectare on his farm to make things work for him. And what happens then is that these vineyards are being pulled out. And what Rissa, when she started looking at old vine wines about 20 years ago, she realized that there's something special about old vine wines in particular. I'll get right to the end. I'll talk to you about what makes it special. And she had a discussion with Mr. Rupert as well, and he said, go and find us the old vine. She literally spent the weekends in a car driving around the winelands trying to find these old forgotten blocks, often not even farmed anymore. Often a farm worker will say to her, Mevrou, daar in die hoek, there's a block that's forgotten. And it was overgrown. She revived our oldest red wine block in South Africa, which is a Sinso in Wellington, 120 years old, forgotten, just left, and it was yielding 500 kilograms a hectare. And at this point, after Andre Morgenthal, who takes the grapes, dropped off 3 or 4 tons because of green harvest, because you want your grapes to be concentrated, we got 5 tons per hectare of that vineyard. So that is coming back to the theme of conservation. You protect your heritage, and that's what our project is about. Primarily is to protect our heritage. But to give you an idea of where we started, I mentioned 20 years ago, Rissa already searched for old vines, and she found these beautiful mystical old blocks in a place called Skirfberg. It's about 3 hours, I think, north from here. At Glen William, you turn left towards Lambert's Bay, towards the west coast, and then on a plateau on the right-hand side, there's a few farms, mainly tea farming, rooibos tea and sheep, and a few blocks of old vines that she found there that was being pulled out. And one of the farmers, well, firstly, she got the grapes in for Lomarin, and they started their old vine series, got grapes for Ibn Sadi, the Malus and so forth, and Chris Arlight. And my first visit there was very, as I said, mystical. It's almost like you feel you're going to see dragons. It's this forgotten world. In the old days, it was literally 2 or 3 days by horseback away from civilization. And we had lunch with one of the farmers, and he told us that before Rissa arrived, and while he was already started pulling out vineyards to replace with fruit, which is more economically viable for them, that 3 kids to go to school, had a farm to run. Rissa found the vineyards and started selling it for him to the brand owners I mentioned earlier. He used to get 1,200 to 2,000 rand a ton at the cooperative, and Rissa managed to bring that up to 8, 12, 15, maybe 20,000 rand a ton, which is not a silver bullet to save the farmer, but you can buy a new tractor, put solar panels on your workers' cottages. And last year, his 3rd child graduated at University of Stellenbosch on old vine money. So these kind of stories really gives me goosebumps. So in 2016, Mr. Rupert gave us the seed funding. Now, as you heard, I studied philosophy and drama. So for me, I thought when we were becoming successful, and Margie knows knows the story very well. We've been friends and colleagues since the late 90s. And we traveled the world via the Great One capitals. And I'm privileged to also be involved with the wine tourism conference that she conceived. And she was with me in those dark first 2 years where I was mandated to save old vines, and here's the money and make it work. But it's never been done in the world before. There is a Barossa Charter, there's a Napa Register, there are small groupings in the world that's voluntarily protecting old vines because of the special grapes and special wines it makes, but it's never been formalized before. So those first 2 years to also watch the money run out was quite scary. And I thought that Mr. Rupert will find it in his heart to renew the funding, but as I said, I'm not a businessman, so I realized that seed funding means startup funding. You must wash your own face after a certain amount of time. We've managed now to stretch that money. We are on 5.5 years. He gave us 2 years. So it's going well. And I think one of the most important things within the project is the seal. And this is where you as a consumer will come in. If you go to Caroline's wine shop down in Sea Point, she moved now from Strand Street to Sea Point, there's a certified heritage vineyards category. And that's something that we, unbeknownst to ourselves, the UCT Business School helped us with our business plan. And after a few years, we realized we actually created a new category. So you'll look at a wine list and you'll see white wine, red wine, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Fair Trade, whatever. You will now see on wine lists certified heritage vineyards with a little seal, that's the little emblem next to our wines, also in the platter guide. The seal gives the consumer a guarantee of traceability. Traceability is based on an industry entity called SARVIS. They're responsible for all the statistics. And you also have to register and sign in when you want to plant a vineyard. And our records date back to the 1900. So we're also the only wine producing country in the world with records like that. In Chile, I know theirs go back to the mid-80s. But because of the traceability, we can now trace back the planting date, which is on the seal, and give you that guarantee, which is quite special. Before we started this project, people always used to ask me, can you please find me a wine vintage 71? Because my child was born in 71. But is that wine still drinkable? You know. Now, what I do is I give people a gift with the planting date of their birth year, which I think is quite special. So traceability, quality, and exclusivity. So it gives you that the production is so small. It's often only 1 or 2 hectares or 5 hectares of that old block. So 1,000, 2,000 cases of wine, very limited. Then I'm not very strong on statistics, given my background of languages and philosophy, but I preempt questions with the stats. So this is just to give an idea of how we managed to keep old vines in the ground. And as I mentioned earlier, in the beginning, I thought my mandate was to save old vineyards. But actually, there's a strong humanitarian element built into this, as I mentioned, with the farmers' livelihood, keeping farmers on the farms and workers in their jobs. So we're gradually growing the resources. So we've got roughly 4,000 hectares under old vines. That's 35 years and older of the total planted, which is 90,000 hectares. So it's a very small amount of vineyards that we're working with. And then Chenin Blanc, almost half of our planting. So Chenin Blanc is very strong within our environment, and we work very closely with the Chenin Blanc Association. And then something that's very important for us is science. Larissa always says, now that we've got the proof that old vine wines are special, we always thought we were pretty, now we know we are pretty. And this research was done by University of Stellenbosch, where a professor took old vine pinotage leaves, genetics, and young vines from Kanonkop, and did the genetic research and found that the genomes actually change as the vines grow older. So there's a genetic difference, which then adds to this whole phenomena of the old vines. And there was also another study done to see if old vine Chenin Blanc aromatics are different from young vine aromatics. And the university did research with the Chenin Blanc Association, and on the left you'll see is the aroma wheel, and then certain aromatic profiles were added after that research because there's different aromatics on old vine wines. And what I want to just emphasize, we're not saying old wines are better than wines made from younger vines. It's just different and interesting and special. So to come back to the fact that it's not only about old vines, there's an environmental impact. There's also the socio-economic impact. And what I found is I coined this term a few years ago because I realized it's not only about the old vines, it's plant to grow old. So the conservation cycle is not only to preserve the old vines. We're trying to plant vineyards that will grow old. So with our virus-free material, you can now plant a block on the correct rootstock, correct site, and that vineyard can grow old. And through the process that what we did, and we created this business model where you don't have to just, you don't get less money for your per hectare because the vine's getting old and your yield's dropping. We actually push that price up. So even if the yield's dropping, the quality is going up. So from 2,000, it goes to 20,000 Rand a hectare. Then to come back to the economic impact, there is an example of a wine list with the little sign, our emblem next to it, that's Fat Butcher in Stellenbosch, the first restaurant that adopted that. And we see that there's a lot of media impact as well. What I saw when I was at Woza, still people like the idea of the old vine theme. It elevates the image of the South African wine industry because the wines are of high quality. It's also a premium priced wine. So we're pushing up the prices for the grapes and for the brand owner and for the retailer. The wines we work with are typically between 300 and 1,000 Rand a bottle. But it all goes back to the farmer. And then in terms of our social impact, we partnered with Falco. Falco makes these shearers. Some of you, as I said, if you're in gardening, that's the best shearer that you can buy. It's a lifetime guarantee, and they sponsor vineyard worker training. If you prune vineyards, let's say younger vineyards, there's a formula, and it's quite easy. It's like working with school kids. But if you work with old vines, it's not pruning anymore. It's an artwork. It's sculpting. Each single vine is different. One arm is dead, the other one is alive. The next one, this one's alive, that one's dead. It's like an old age home. You need to go, and each room, that person has had a different experience in life, and the pill box looks different at 6 o'clock in the evening for each different room. And I say that with respect. My friend Johan Kruger, who's very involved with the project, always says, when you work with old vines, you listen like you listen to your grandmother for the wisdom, because that's where we learn. Why did that vine survive for 80 years or 100 years in that one spot? Professor Deloire, that was at the University of Stellenbosch, when he opened the launch of the Old Vine series at Lomaro, said, an old vine, a vineyard is not like people. They can't switch the aircon on or open an umbrella or put a jersey on. They have to sustain the heat, the weather, the rain, everything. And that we need to understand why they did survive through those decades. And they also think for themselves, which brings me, so by the way, the training in winter before pruning starts, we do about 5 classes, 15 people each. So all our members, we have 120 members now. We had 70 before COVID, which is impressive. And the top pruners that look after these old blocks, they come to the classes. Then we do a theory class with them, run them through how to prune, how to look after their shearers. And we do a practical in the vineyard, how to actually prune an old vine. So we're coming towards the end. This is just the rootstock. The DNA of the old vines live in the rootstock. People often think and say that an old vine has got very deep roots, but that's not true. Late Professor Archer used to say, a vine is like a student. It follows the way of the least resistance. So it goes where the resources are. So if the bar is across the street, they go to the bar right there. If it's down along Dorp Street, then they go to the Akker. So I was in Spain a couple of years ago. I saw a root system that was this shallow, but the roots went to where the technicians are sitting. It hit a bedrock and then just grew along until it found a spot where it could find nutrients and water and so on. But then at Waterford, I saw a Grenache root system that was 5 meters deep. So that's all depends on your soil system. So vineyards, when they grow older, they look after their resources. When you're in your 20s and you're a student, you party as if there's no tomorrow. And it's just a Red Bull and you're on back to class. With old people, it's like Rosa says, a little blanket on the knees, rooibos tea, be careful. And the vines, when they turn 30, and then I come back to the age thing, we decided 30, 35 was, I've been speaking to all my counterparts across the world, and everybody agrees vines grow old and stabilize at between 30 and 40 years. We don't know why that is, but the juice comes into the cellar almost perfect, the pH and acidity and the sugar. But for some reason, after 3 decades, a vineyard settles. With humans, in theory, it should be the same, that you maybe have a career path, start a family. Not all of us get it right, but you start settling and it's not like in your 20s. And you also start looking after your finances, and that's what the old vines do. They also, during heat waves, they produce less fruit and then less leaves. With the young vines, we just see they just carry on regardless, and then they suffer because there's enough water. And then basically an old vine looks after its own procreation. That they don't care what we do with them, that we want grapes for winemaking. They just want to produce the best grapes for the birds to come and then reap and then distribute the seeds. In other words, they try and make those berries as sexy as possible. That's in our good favor, because then you get smaller berries, concentrated juice and flavors. Finally, what makes it special? When I talk to winemakers across the world, they always say complexity, structure, mid-palate weight, length. That's what makes old wines different. So I implore on you to go and find an old wine with a seal on, at Caroline's, for example, or Wine Concepts, and enjoy the old vines. Thank you very much for having me today. I'd like to ask Shelly to... Oh, any questions? Yes. Yes. Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, I ran our group for the International Women's Club for Wine Appreciation for 7 years up until the end of 2019. And I must say this was not prevalent when I was running the group. We went to a different vineyard every single month, and most certainly I wasn't introduced to this. So this is very, very interesting. And the one thing I'd like to query with you and ask you, you say you find a block, a number of hectares or whatever, of old vines that are not producing. They're thinking about pulling them up, and in some cases are pulling them up. And I certainly did hear that. how do you rejuvenate them? You say you're doing it, but how do you do it?
That's a very good question. To take 2 steps back, with old vines, in the beginning, I got very upset when I saw people pulling out old vines. But I soon realized that viticulturally, there's 3 sections. It's not 3/3, but the first section is the vineyards that have been saved, that have been the brand owners I'm talking about, that is looking after this vineyard. I don't have to worry about that. They've been saved. The middle part is like trying to save the rhino. I don't get there soon enough. I meet people every week that says, I wish I met you last year. I just pulled out a 45-year-old Brabant, wasn't producing anymore. And I wish I knew you then. And then coming back to your question then, how do you revive the old vine? It's by pruning practice, composting, mulching. So it's just care, just helping to revive and rejuvenate. And you work with an old vine, as I mentioned with sculpting, you work with the part that's the healthiest, and you try and work that back into a young, a rejuvenated vine. And then the last third is the stuff that needs to be pulled out. They're so virused, they just don't produce anymore, or they're planted in the wrong site. So you have to get rid of it. But the plant to grow old concept for me is very important, that you start now for the next generation. Anything else?
It's quite a marketing ploy at the moment because it's quite fashionable, old bush vines and old wines. And I've heard that some more unscrupulous wine farms are keeping the rootstock, but then just grafting new vines on top of that. Is that a problem for what you're trying to do, or is it just something that we need to be aware of and look for the label? Thank you.
The grafting is not a problem for us. It's perfectly fine to, and it's actually more cost effective for the farmer to do that rather opposed to pulling out the vineyards and replanting. It costs you 250 to 3,000 rand a hectare over 3 years to replant the vineyard. So this idea of what I explained of keeping the vines in the ground for longer is more cost effective. Plus, if you can push the prices up, but it is not an certified old vine if you've grafted, as you explained now. So that particular block's wine will not get the certification seal.
Is there a list available of all the members that you've got on the Old Vine project?
Yeah, on our website, oldvineproject.co.za, we've listed all our members. To be honest, it's not updated because we're growing too fast. It's a very young organization, but it grows exponentially. But yes, if you go to members on our site, you'll get photographs, background stories, and so forth.
Do all the old vine wines have the seal on it? Because there's quite a big range starting from 74 Rand, Brampton, right up to, well, you know the other prices.
Not all of our members use the seal. Someone like, for example, Ibn Sadi, he's very serious about his packaging, doesn't like any stickers or whatever awards on his bottle. So, but I don't mind that because he is one of the founding members and one of the most famous producers within the old vine realm. But increasingly, the seal is becoming quite important. We've had situations in the last year where brand owners would call me frantically saying, please, can I become a member? And after I've been trying for 3 years to convince them to become a member, because the importer asks for them to be an Old Vine project member and to carry the seal. You can't say you're Old Vine if you don't prove it through the regulation that we have. So that's become very interesting. So there's a pull into the market, not a push from our side, which is quite valuable for us. And sommeliers overseas also ask the producer, you're telling me you're Old Vine, where's your seal? We had to DHL seals to Germany once to a winemaker who could not get his wine sold or listed in a restaurant in Germany. So that is, but as someone said, it's a very young organization going for 5 years, so it's a matter of time. Sorry, there was.
Is this project going in France and Spain and other countries?
No, this is a first in the world that was formalized. There are, for generations, the French has put Le Vin on their labels, but it could be in 16 or 20 or 60 years old vineyards. That's not regulated. Everything almost in Spain and Portugal is old. So, but there's no regulations, nothing like the Old Vine Project, except for example, the voluntary groupings like the Barossa Charter or the guys in Napa and Lodi. There's a small group, 16 winemakers down in Chile that looks after old Grenache, but it's all voluntary. There's nothing like the traceability of that seal anywhere in the world, because they don't have the SARVIS, that industry body that's got the records. To franchise it, it's on the table. I just want to get it right in South Africa first, and then we'll look at them. But I've had people approaching us for that. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, good morning. I was just going to ask, what is the life expectancy of an old wine? And what about the vineyards of Groot Constantia, which are known to have, say, some of the oldest vines?
The life expectancy, it could be 200 to 300 years from what I've seen overseas in Barossa and in Spain. Our oldest vineyards here, it would be 120, 150 years old. Our biggest problem was that we were supplied with very bad virus-infected material during the 70s and 80s, and those vines just don't last. So I come back to the plant to grow old. We've got great material now. We've got an institution called Vititech, it's part of Vinpro. They clean up the material for us. So that's the expectancy. Constantia, very good question. All our old vineyards are in Stellenbosch, Paarl, Wellington, Swartland, West Coast. Bot River is Hope Marguerite at Beaumont, but so nothing towards the East Coast and nothing in Constantia. The reason for that is vineyards come from the Mediterranean. They like arid conditions, dry, hot, and then cold, wet winters. It's continuously too cold and wet in Constantia or along the South Coast. But with climate change, it seems like within the next 50 years, from the west to the east, there's already signs that the West Coast is becoming a desert. And we're quite worried about that effect, but the potential for planting vineyards is actually opening up towards the east. But currently, that is the trend. But Constantia's got no old vines, funny enough. But a lot of the vineyards along the West Coast comes from Constantia cuttings.
Shelly?
Thank you. I'll just swap over quickly. Wow, Andre, your passion is tangible. Thank you for an amazing talk. I'm fine. There we go. Yes. Okay, right. I don't like standing between a room full of amazing women and men and lunch, but hopefully we'll continue the interesting conversation, and I'm very grateful for the invitation to share with you this morning a little bit about one of the programs that we run at WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. And my name is Shelly Fuller, and yeah, it's very inspiring to be here in a room with a lot of interesting women from the few conversations I've had. So allow me to take you on a little journey. We're going to follow the sugar bird with its long, distinctive tail across the Western Cape. And the journey in the next little while will be, that was too fast, will be unpacking why a conservation NGO partnered with the wine industry here in South Africa. We'll introduce you to some of the conservation champions We'll talk a little bit about the sticky protea and the stickiness of the message that we're trying to put across. And we'll continue the journey and see where it leads, and hopefully allow for a little bit of some questions coming from you all. So I'll just start with this little video, which allows a brief introduction. And it's just music and a little bit of reading, and then I'll continue. So that gave you a little bit of an intro as to why this was initiated. So essentially, 95% of the wine that comes from South Africa is grown in the Cape Floral Kingdom. So that's an area of incredible biodiversity, world-renowned because of the density of the species in such a small area. So 70% of these species occur nowhere else in the world. And if you just look at the map there, you'll see that's the Cape Floral Kingdom in green, with the World Heritage Sites in pink, and then the wine growing regions overlaid, and you can see the natural, the overlap. And the reason is because of the quality of the soil and the diversity of the soil. What's underground gives way to the diversity above ground. And so that's why we have such exceptional wines, but it's also competing with landscapes and habitats for biodiversity. So in the early 2000s, when the wine industry was booming and there were lots of vineyards being planted, the wine industry realized that if they don't take care of this natural area, because that's actually the foundation of farming, clean water, good quality soil, that actually the integrity and the sustainability of the wine industry was going to be at threat. So originally it was the Botanical Society that joined with the wine industry and initiated the Biodiversity in Wine initiative. And it really is a unique selling point for the South African wine, the wines that go internationally. And Andre was involved in the very beginning with WOSA. And so that we co-developed the sustainability seal. It's called the Integrated Production of Wine, another seal to look for on the product. That is also a traceability seal, and it's the wine industry's environmental standard, which means that over 93% of the wine industry is using that seal and can say that they are farming in a way that's less of an impact on nature. And that's incredible. There's no other wine growing region in the world that has such a high portion of the wine able to use that certification scheme. And so as WWF, we realized that we also want to recognize those farms that are taking it one step further. So if over 90% of the wine has already got the accreditation of that exceptional environmental sustainability seal, how do we keep pushing the boundaries and highlight those that are making extra commitments for nature conservation, energy conservation, and water conservation? Really important aspects for our industry and our conservation here. And so that's the conservation champions. We work with only less than a quarter of the industry, 55 farms that we now work with at the moment. And interestingly enough, through lockdown, through the blocks on wine sales, we've also had an interest, more of an increase in farms that are wanting to join the program. It's a voluntary program. There's no fees attached, but we do ask them to commit and show their commitment in terms of those three categories: energy, water, and nature conservation. So those farms that show their commitment and sign an agreement with us as WWF, they're able to use that Sugarbird and Protea logo on their wine. And we are seeing that exact pull that Andre mentioned in terms of the market asking for this, which is wonderful. I couldn't fit all of the farms on one slide, and some of them are also fruit farms that supply their grapes into a wine cellar and a brand. But hopefully you'll recognize some of your favorite wine brands there. And they collectively represent just over 40,000 hectares, sorry. But what's important to us is that they are playing their role in conserving over 25,000 hectares of critical habitat. So they are the stewards, the custodians of those lands within the Cape Flog Kingdom. So the fynbos, the renosterveld, the succulent karoo habitats that are so important for nature, but also for society and for the businesses. And so these champions are able to use the logo, and we really try and promote what they're doing in their individual capacities. So taking their commitment to the next level. And they each have their own story of what they're doing on the farm. And it really is about the people behind their passion. And we're seeing more and more. I mean, I know that we've now had 2 examples of a sticker on the wine bottle that you should look for, but there's actually just too much out there. Especially in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of different eco labels and a lot of awareness that's been raised about how the product is made and what the carbon footprint is, and all of these green stickers that you should look for. But I think we've got to, first of all, make sure that there's credibility and integrity behind that label. And I encourage you as consumers to ask those difficult questions, to ask what it means, where does it come from, what does it take to get the sticker on the product, the Old Vine certification scheme, the IPW sustainability seal on the neck, and the Sugarbird sticker as well. Each one of them represents a certain set of criteria and has to have really strict rules to make sure that it's audited and legitimate. And over and above that whole system that has to be in place, we have to make the message memorable. What makes you want to look for a wine bottle on such an enormous space, in such an enormous space on the shopping shelves? And even now online, when everything is more online, people are shopping online, getting their boxes delivered. We tend to go to those that we know. And so the loyalty is around brands you know, a flavor you like, a price bracket, what those other golden stickers mean. And so how do we make our Sugarbird and Protea stand out and be recognized and remembered? And really it's about making sure that you experience something associated with that wine farm and with that brand, because experiences are really the taste, the touch, the smell. That's where the memories come in. And so more and more we're trying to encourage that the farms invite people into their fynbos, get people onto the mountain biking routes, allow families to have picnics, and even when people couldn't visit the farms, things were happening online. There were virtual tastings. We were encouraging people just to get to know what goes into this bottle of wine. And it's so much more than just a bottle of wine. Of course, there's a whole process and a passion and skills that go into making that wine, but what else can you experience on the farm? And what will make you want to come back and bring your family and tell your friends to support that farm? And it really is about shifting behavior. You have to experience something. So we can't expect society to conserve nature if they don't understand how nature is involved in their everyday life. And as WWF, it's continuously something we have to try and take away all the science and the doom and gloom, because we are in a bit of a predicament. But like we've heard, we can all play our part. And as consumers, you actually have an incredibly powerful role. With every purchase, your choice of how you spend your money can make a significant difference to supporting farms that are doing incredible work And in order to do that, you need to know what it means and be connected. And so this diversification of what the farms are doing now and inviting people to experience and feel their passion is growing more and more. And I just put a couple of pictures here to show you and hopefully entice you to go and visit some of the farms. Some of the farms are planting fynbos in between their vineyards, like those pink feichies at De Wetshof, where in the springtime it's a bloom of feichies and it's beautiful, but it's also a local indigenous species that's just from that area and is providing a cover for the soil, which helps the vineyards grow. Obviously, there's the family-friendly picnics that you can experience at Spear and Art. There's a fynbos and wine pairing that you can experience at Bartney, where you crush the different fynbos species leaves and then you taste the different wines, and it's incredible how it changes your palate. Papenkales is a range from Mervida in near Rawsonville, where they're raising awareness of the different species that they're conserving in their wetland. And again, it's about bringing those stories to the consumers, to the people that are enjoying your wine anyway, but now you get to understand what's going on the farm besides the wine. And they're a multi-generational farm that's really passionate about conserving that wetland. And obviously the mountain biking, all of the adventure races, the hiking, getting people into nature from young to old, that's really how we're going to encourage people to conserve it. Just your little patch. And especially starting with the young as well. And really connecting people with how these farms are playing their part as stewards of the land. And so to find out more, if you'd like to, we've also moving into the digital age and not just looking at what's happening on the farm and conserving the natural species, but we've also developed an app. I will leave these little pocket cards here. And that shows you the list of the full conservation champion farms, and the app will show you what you can do at that farm, if it's mountain biking or a restaurant. And we're continually updating the app as well. We need to continually make sure all the farms are listed, but also there's some specials you can enter to get an incredible wine and food pairing. And we're trying to, again, just encourage more feet through the door so that you find that connection and you develop a loyalty to that brand. You can, of course, also look on our website. And we've recently started an Instagram account called Follow the Sugarbird. And it's growing quite well because obviously everything's so visual on Instagram and the pictures tell a thousand words. And also that allows the farms to tell their own story. Because that is very, very powerful. It's one thing for us as an international brand to be able to recognize these farms, but more and more that personal feeling is what the consumers are after. And so if we continue on this path, we've got quite a lot of work to do. There's a lot of challenges in terms of growing the vines, making a product that is viable, and also being able to stay committed on the path of conservation, not expanding the vineyards, not using the pesticides. But actually, I think the pandemic has taught us more than anything that we cannot continue the way we have been, consuming and wasting. Nothing should go back to normal. Normal wasn't working. If we go back to the way we were doing things before, then we've actually lost a really important lesson. And I think we'll all remember how we felt in those quiet days where we were in strict lockdown and suddenly you had to raid the pantry cupboards and not go to the shops. And it might be inconvenient and it'll be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think we have to remember that because things are too easy these days and it's just instant and it's quick and convenient, but the plastic is there forever. And the impact on the environment is something that future generations will have to deal with. So I think we all have to rise up and do better and make sure that we are all playing our part in the choices we make every day, in how we're communicating and teaching our children and our grandchildren. Because we can never underestimate that a small group of people that are committed and passionate can change the world, because as Margaret Mead said, in fact, that's the only thing that's ever worked. So an incredible opportunity to speak to a group like you, and hopefully the ripple effect continues to grow, because we really do have a lot of work to do, but we can do it as long as we make every choice a conscious choice. So that's me. Thank you very much, and I welcome questions. Are there any questions? I'll do the little run around the room. I think I've stunned you. No questions? Okay, great. There's always got to be one, and then more questions will come.
How is your group reducing the use of chemicals and things like Roundup? I'm American, obviously, and it's just scary to me how much is still being used.
Great question. Thank you. So the default answer would be we're resistant to change. If farming practices are used to using certain products and they work, and our grandfather and fathers used it, then we'll just keep using it. But the trend is definitely shifting away from that, not only because it's more expensive, because it's fossil fuel based and everything that's based on diesel and oil is going up in price, but because of the impact and because of the market, because of international regulations, those products are being phased out and banned out. South Africa is a little slow to catch up with that, unfortunately. So there are products that are still in circulation and allowed to be used according to our laws in the wine industry. But that is also changing. And for our program, we do require that none of those harmful chemicals are allowed to be used, and we investigate all the spray programs. And same with the integrated production of wine. They're always upping the level that you have to shift to alternatives. But equally, we have to have those alternatives available in this country at a price that's financially viable. So there will be farms that say they can't afford to shift to more regenerative practices, or we're not asking to only go organic, but to use less chemicals because it'll devastate their crop. But that's why the leaders like the conservation champions, we try and communicate what they're using, what they're doing, so that the rest of the industry can see it is possible, and this is the product they're using, and this is how long it took to shift across. So there's a lot of products that I wish were still not in use, but glyphosate, which is the main ingredient for Roundup, is used very much on a site-specific basis until the legislation bans it totally. Yeah. Want to wrap up? Okay. Thank you very much. I'll stay around for a little bit longer.
I just noticed in the audience, one of our members, Emma Borg, they are very involved with conservation of wild dogs, and they're also a member of Old Vines. So nice to see you, Emma. Just stand up.
Well, I think we've all learnt something this morning. I certainly have, and I'm going to be looking for those stickers and badges now on the wine. It's great. Thank you very much for educating us on these important projects. So first of all, I think we'd like to say, oh, that's a very eco-looking bouquet, isn't it? We'd like to say a very big thank you to our speakers. Thank you very much, Shelley. And Andres gets a shopping bag, yes. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Andre. And we have one last job before you go. We'd just like you to help draw the raffle. So Shelley, would you mind drawing this one? We've got two prizes. So are we doing the wine? This lovely bottle of wine is going first. So if you would draw a ticket for us, please. Old Vine wine, a beautiful bottle of Old Vine wine to be enjoyed. 218. 218. Oh, excellent. Okay, come forward. Oh, what color? Are there lots of different colors? Oh, sorry, apologies. White. White. Phew. Thank you. Right, Andre, your turn now. Now we have the cash prize, which is in this envelope. Thank you very much.
This is blue.
I think this is that green?
Turquoise green.
Turquoise green. 130. 130. With a sort of green border on it. 130. Somebody coming forward? Yay, okay. Excellent. Well done. Congratulations. Drinks are on you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Thanks again to our speakers, and I'm now going to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.